I have about half an hour until my bus comes. I could go all the way to the end of the trail, but then I would probably miss the bus. So I stopped here, and so yeah, I'll do a bit of a video. I called Hardy Nutritionals today and told them about the anxiety I was having over the weekend. And they said that's pretty normal, and they said I could take more of the vitamin C. So today I'm planning on taking 3 at least, and I could go up more. It's kind of expensive, but they said it's only temporary, so maybe for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So to me, that's worth it. And then they told me to read this document they have on their website about things that can limit the process. And I read through it, and the stuff that can apply to me is that I do like to go rollerblading, and I was planning to start that sprinting a few times a week thing. But exercise can actually speed up the detox process and give more side effects of coming off the meds. So I still chose to go rollerblading today because it's sort of a Goldilocks day, just right for rollerblading. Not too hot, and it's actually going to get really hot here in the next few days, and not too cold, and it was actually kind of cold and rainy over the weekend, so I wanted to take this opportunity. But I did sort of just stroll more. I didn't really skate too much. A lot of it's downhill, so I just sort of coasted and enjoyed myself. And I noticed I didn't have any of that anxiety feeling. So that feeling could also be from sitting in front of the computer too much. I probably spent 8 hours a day on the weekend in front of the screen between editing and making videos. And it felt good to get that all done, but I'm noticing that being indoors might not be good. And they said getting too much sun can be something that makes a person have more withdrawal effects because of how it speeds up the detox process by heating up your body. And who knows, maybe all that vitamin D goes into action trying to detox things as well. So I did spend a few hours in the sun on Friday, and I think I did the sprints that morning, and then I was in front of a screen, and so that could have all contributed to feeling some of that anxiety. So upping the vitamin C, they also said drink more water, and I could definitely drink more water. The water here in California is kind of gross compared to where I'm from. So yeah. And another thing that was in that document was menstrual cycle, and I was talking to myself about how I could really feel my PMS this last time now that I'm off the meds, and it kind of coincided with the exact same time I stopped taking the meds. So I'm going to ask them about that next time I talk to them, because it says take an extra dose of 4 vitamins for a week before or something. So I'm going to ask them for clarification about that, because I could probably use that. And they have another product which is greens and probiotics, which I might ask them about, and also inositol, which they said is good for anxiety in that document. So I'm going to ask about that. If I'm going to be on Hardy Nutritional stuff, I may as well keep to their products and go all out with their products while I'm deciding to do that. Not really muck around, not really say, oh, well, I don't really have money for that, I don't really need it. Just try and make this process as smooth as possible. And that document I read said people can have withdrawal effects for months or even a couple of years after coming off. So I think I need to keep that in mind and really reframe anything that I experience as a withdrawal effect and not a symptom of mental illness. It's just a withdrawal effect, and that makes it easier to manage and handle. So it feels good to be outdoors, so I need to notice what it feels good to do. Sitting in my room and just doing stuff on the computer doesn't feel good, but at the same time I do want to finish some of these elements of the dialogue with myself before the 20th. And it was interesting that I was talking to myself about inviting in that other voice. And when I was editing my videos, and even when I wasn't editing my videos, just sort of going about my day, all of this stuff was coming through me in terms of this other voice talking about totally different things. and it seemed pretty insightful to me. It's nothing that I come up with myself, so I see it, I'm like, oh, that seems interesting. And I think I need to keep the videos shorter because the internet is being weird here, and making so many videos and then having to wait for them to upload takes a while. So it could actually help to stop talking to myself about the process I'm going through in terms of my decisions about ways to edit videos, but for some reason it just sort of comes out. And that would be good too for using the photo app instead of YouTube Capture, which is okay, but the photo app only uploads 15-minute videos, at least in the current versions of iOS. And I was looking into getting an Apple Watch, and I was looking at the rumors for the next version of the Apple Watch, the number 3, and also a blood glucose meter, which could be good for that ketogenic diet testing one day. And it also has something else that sounded cool. But anyways, the point is that I think it'd be cool to have something on my wrist that I can always make calls in case I am in distress. So I might get the 2 and then upgrade to the 3, or I might just wait to get the 3. And either way, I'll wait till I get home, so I'm buying the product in my own country so I can return it or whatever if I need to. Or I could get it shipped to California. I haven't decided. We'll see. If everything goes smooth this next week, maybe I will wait, but if not, it could be good to keep an eye on my heart rate. Safety first, and ease of this process first, and money second. So I'm back at home base now, and the other thing I wanted to say about the withdrawal symptoms paradigm as something to refer one's experiences to. So I think I'm detoxing from that as well. So remembering that there are withdrawal symptoms from the meds and detoxification symptoms is an important thing. It's a transition space, and then eventually when nothing comes up at all, then there's nothing really to think about. And I was reading an article by Dr. Mercola about that high intensity interval. 3 minutes of that was equal to 150 minutes of moderate intensity training. And one thing that video showed that was on that article of his was that there was a rat study where they knocked out a gene that basically made the mice age a lot faster, like twice as fast. But if they had those mutant mice and they ran them on the treadmill 3 times a week or something, they actually didn't age. So just showing the importance of exercise. So I will try and put that in there. I had a nice skate and it was really fun. I just took my last dose of vitamin C, and then I'm going to make a smoothie and have my last dose of Hearty Nutritionals. It's kind of late for it. It's going on 7, but that's just the way it worked out. And I want to do a few minutes of debriefing on all that stuff I read, those things I wrote, and I think they're pretty intense and pretty harsh. But at the same time, there's a lot in there. And in those letters I did mention that the medications and the mental health paradigm seem to end people's lives 25 years early, but I didn't mention that suicide is often a side effect of many medications, so I didn't actually put that part in there. But it's an important point to add. I was emphasizing being afraid of care and that leading to it, but I didn't actually add in that that's often a side effect of the meds, compounded with being afraid of the care and the way people are received. It just really adds to it. And I feel like, in a way, I'm a voice in opposition of the use of long-term antipsychotics. I think that has a lot to do with the 25-year decrease in lifespan. It kills a lot of people, and have that clear distinction of who it's going to help and who it's going to harm. I know lots of people on long-term antipsychotics, and they're doing kind of okay. But as soon as I am on them, it's a very fine line between life and death. And sometimes for people, by the time one finds out they have a bad reaction to it, it's too late. So how many people die because the meds make them kill themselves? We can never really know, and that's kind of the trick of it all. And oftentimes it's blamed on the person's illness too, and not the meds. We don't know what the internal experience of the person was before they ended their life. If I was on those meds and I killed myself, I wouldn't want to. It would just sort of make me. And that's really scary, and I don't want meds to kill me. And another point about those letters was that in response to my complaint, I learned that the Advance Directive and Representation Agreement is probably largely crap. So it's a kind of a nice thing to have on hand, but it doesn't guarantee anything. A piece of paper doesn't overrule what the doctor thinks in the whim of the moment. And in my complaint letter, I also said, that's my hope for myself, and I won't stop until it's true. And at this point, it's actually true that I haven't been taking medications for over a whole week, because my hope was that I wouldn't have to take medications and be a part of the system. And I did make the point in the letter about how recovery is 20 years behind, and now I've heard of this person-directed thing, and I feel like that's even 20 years behind. Well, it was maybe thought of 20 years ago, and it still hasn't been implemented, so recovery still hasn't been implemented, but I think person-directedness is different than recovery completely, because recovery is still within the confines of the system, and sure, it still sort of supports people in their goals by maybe helping them set goals, but so much of the system doesn't actually support those goals. And if somebody had a goal not to be on meds, the current recovery program wouldn't be very supportive of that at all. Not only are doctors reluctant to taper, the strategies aren't out there, and a lot of people taper too fast, and then it's not successful, and then they end up thinking they need meds for life. And people aren't given extra support when they're coming off meds. It's not like, oh, this is really important to you, let's give you extra support. So I think person-directedness is something completely different than recovery. It's really about one's whole life, not just recovering a life, but recreating a life. And I'm saying all this stuff to myself partly because there's so many memes in the mental health system saying, seek help, take the meds, talk to your psychiatrist, talk to your doctor about this, all the commercials on TV, all the anti-stigma campaigns, all the different runs for mental health and different things. And those are all great. And the mental health system helps a lot of people, and it helped me for a long time. But it's not designed to help me reach my goal of actually transcending it. It's designed to keep me in it indefinitely. So yeah, it's overcoming the memes of the pharmaceutical and the whole medical training, and all of the universities and degrees and everything. So all my words to myself are really to move myself out of the vortex of gravity of all those words and memes and people and energy and money directed at funneling people towards that type of system. And it's full of well-meaning people who really want to help, but it also limits. It limits when it doesn't have any exit plans and exit strategies out of taking all these meds that really limit one's ability to fully feel alive and function in the world the way one would want to. And whoever wants to take meds forever, that's up to each individual person. And that's the whole point. If any individual doesn't want to, it doesn't mean, oh, stop them tomorrow. It means create very solid plans and ways to move towards that kind of goal. And oftentimes doctors are reluctant because it's on them if something bad happens. Well, if there was proper supports in place and a proper whole division of the mental health system to help people actually exit the mental health system completely. And if there's so many divisions helping people get funneled towards it between the police and mental health first aid and all the hospitals and the ambulances and even public school systems pointing at people and thinking that they should be funneled towards the system, and medical doctors, well, there should be also strategies to help people get out of that when they want, when it's no longer helpful. So it's a lot of energy to go against and move out of and step outside of. And it's not going against the grain, it's going against a vortex, a huge vortex of memes and energy ready to suck me back in. And I said in one of those letters, I want my 25 years back, and I want to support others to do the same. And it's very true. And I wrote that before I came to California. And when I got to California in February, shortly after I got here, I learned that one of my peer support colleagues passed away. And he was probably in his late 50s. And it really saddened me because he was a very strong advocate. And I had the opportunity to participate in some different dialogues with him present, and he spoke my language, and that was the language of changing the language that is used against people, and he was very astute and able to pick that out, and very vocal about voicing this kind of stuff. So I kind of want to dedicate whatever parts that I talked about that he would resonate with, if he was here right now to read it and tell me which parts that really resonated with him, I want to dedicate those parts to him. And I do have one more letter I want to read that I wrote to the system in response to the one-on-one peer support program being dropped in my region. Not the whole peer support program, but the one-on-one, which is the meat, the tofu, the tofurkey of peer support. And I'm pretty sure that if he would read it, he would agree with a lot of the things I say. And I see him as somebody who lost his 25 years. He was in the system, and he didn't get his final 25 years of life. And to me, it's tragic beyond measure. I know that he is somebody who wouldn't want to die early. And so I want to read this last letter and dedicate it to him. And it's not the last thing I'm going to read, but it's the last thing sort of towards the mental health system. And a friend of mine actually pointed out a blog post that she posted on her wall on Facebook, and I read it, and it was titled, "Rethinking Mental Illness. Are we drugging our prophets and healers?" And I probably haven't talked too much about that kind of stuff, but I did go to the Revisioning Madness conference, which might have talked a little bit about that. And they gave a photocopy of a poster from, I think, the 60s, and there was a conference called The Value of Psychotic Experience at Esalen. And Alan Watts was there and other people. And Alan Watts actually has a really good clip on YouTube about the value of psychotic experience. And I totally agree with everything that's said in the article. It's on veronica.org. She sounds like a pretty cool advocate. And I was thinking about the word prophet. And actually today I was writing a little bit, and I wrote down, in response to thinking about how our parents are kind of like our parrots, because they just parrot things to us and expect to sort of take on whatever they parrot to us, and we're supposed to live as a version of them. And I don't think I talked about that yet, but when I wrote that down yesterday, this morning I realized that if we're not parrots, we're prophets, because if we're not just parroting what everybody else is, we're actually sort of a prophet, even if it's very subtle and minor. It's still sort of bringing something to awareness that is unseen, because what's seen is what we keep parroting to each other. And when I wrote that down, and then I looked at the article my friend told me to read, it said, "Are we drugging our prophets and healers?" So it's a good sign to maybe move towards this whole prophetic element of these states of consciousness. And prophecy doesn't have to be this big, unimaginable thing. It's just sort of seeing the implicate order that Dr. David Bohm talks about, and making it explicit, making it explicit, and doing so through our words and doing so through the perception of our energies into words and unfold that. So I will probably read little bits of that later, but I just wanted to talk about that quickly. So here goes the letter. I feel that peer support as it's delivered in the mental health authority is largely tokenism, though it doesn't have to be this way. The peer support worker is not seen as part of the team with its own unique value and contribution. Because of this, it cannot effectively provide the unique value that it has to offer. This myopic view is depriving many people that are struggling from benefit referred to peer support. If someone does get a peer support worker, it's often as a last resort when a clinician is unable to help, as opposed to adding richness to a person's recovery team. I feel that with the way peer support is viewed, it's difficult for a PSW to be effective and show one's value when it's hoped by the clinical teams that the PSW will be able to do what they have in mind. Since the clinicians do not understand the role, they have unrealistic or out-of-scope expectations. As there is no dialogue between PSWs and clinicians in the spirit of collaboration of what each brings to the table, PSWs do not have the opportunity to shine. PSWs are expected to be prescriptive and might lean that way in order to appease clinicians, again distorting the role. Part of the PSW's role is not to apply a medical lens. A clinician often passes on diagnostic jargon that can be damaging to the relationship when being told about a new participant. I feel that peer support is not as valuable as it could be if it were delivered within a model that was in accordance with the principles of peer support. If a PSW does have to work within a medical framework, extra care should be taken to ensure a peer support relationship gets off to a good start. Providing peer support in the community is very valuable and allows a person to have time with the PSW one-on-one to develop a genuine connection through which mutual learning can happen. It would be a tragedy if that dimension of peer support were eliminated, as it is possibly the most rich and transformative. I had a peer support worker 5 years ago who helped me get a volunteer job. Without that one-on-one help, I don't know if I'd be as far along today. At the time, I was waking up at noon or later and had no routine. By establishing a routine, I then had the confidence to wake up early once a week, which led to waking up for a part-time job on other days. I feel conflicted in that I don't feel there is much psychological safety in working in the community one-on-one when not supported and valued by the clinical team. I also wonder if they are capable of being supportive or seeing the value. This is doubly disappointing, as I would like to imagine that clinicians would be thrilled that a number of individuals have recovered enough to get back and work in peer support. Why are successes within the system not valued and even encouraged to grow by clinicians? If they don't care about PSWs, maybe they don't care about their clients either, as PSWs are often clients or former clients. Many don't care enough to refer to peer support. This makes the PSW team feel down on themselves, but not through lack of abilities. How can we show and develop our capacities if not seen as valuable enough to afford these opportunities? Peer support would be more valuable if the referrals came out of the clubhouses. The philosophy of the clubhouses is similar to peer support, and way less energy would be wasted on trying to convince clinicians to see the value. I feel one-on-one peer support should be delivered out of clubhouses to ensure psychological safety of peer support workers and ensure that peer support can continue to happen one-on-one. I have supported people one-on-one in the community, and I end up in the hospital in large part to the subtle ways that the participants I supported were oppressed by the system. I also have co-facilitated a psychoeducation group with a clinician. I found the content disempowering, and I couldn't believe that's what sensitive people with a new diagnosis were being told to believe about themselves. I felt completely powerless, and I could imagine how it was making other members of the group feel. There is no way to provide feedback to inform clinical services to be more empowering and sensitive. I really hope that PSWs aren't forced to replace their valuable one-on-one work with co-facilitating clinical groups that will likely be re-traumatizing and incongruent. Putting a PSW in this situation is a form of coercion, because having a PSW there is like saying the material is helpful and lived experience approved. In this situation, a PSW is more like bait for group members to buy into whatever is being sold. It's putting PSWs in a situation to smile and nod through material that is not in alignment with the principles of peer support and has nothing to do with peer support. A PSW would then be a token of the medical model instead of providing unique value and support to an individual in a person-centered relationship. If it is felt that PSWs are not doing a good job at one-on-one in the community in the eyes of clinicians, then they would do better to move the one-on-one service base to the clubhouse rather than canceling one-on-ones altogether. A flower cannot grow in poisoned soil, and peer support cannot flower in unsuitable conditions. We wouldn't say it's a seed's fault for not flowering in poison. We would put the seed in a supportive environment. I feel the only way to ensure psychological safety for PSWs is to be out of the clinical eye, both partnerships and supervision. I feel that my colleagues are amazing and don't even know how amazing they can be if supported to flower. This would benefit so many people that need the importance of the continuance of one-on-one peer support for the sake of the people who might benefit, as well as changing the way in which it's supported to ensure its success as well as psychological safety. So that's kind of long-winded, and it's a particular case where one-on-one peer support was dropped in my particular region, and it was shocking to a lot of people, and especially my colleagues who deliver that service and support people, and it's a large part of their life. And I'm not saying that all clinicians were against one-on-one peer support, and it's very couldn't really belong in the clinical environment, at least as it is now. If the role was really understood and nurtured and valued, and that perspective of a peer was welcome and invited and asked for and sought out, then it'd be a different story. But it's not that way. So that's not how I feel about it totally. It's just something that I wrote that I just want to share, just to get a flavor of something. I don't know what. And peer support is very valuable, and I hope that comes across in this letter. And it was very situation specific, and it probably didn't do much to write it, but that's okay.